Welcome to our panel here. I'm really pleased to be here. We'll do a few introductions and get into some great content for you. One of the things we're going to do is spend a little time drilling down into a couple of case studies here where we're going to be talking about a particular company and how they've gone about implementing IoT. So I'm going to kick it off in a minute with first some introductions. Then we'll do a little bit of some context of what's happening in monetization these days. And then we'll drill into the particular case study and get some comments, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. So let me just start off. So again, my name is Chris Kocher. I have a consulting firm. We do management and marketing consulting. We focus primarily on business and product strategy. I do a lot of work in monetization, some of the kinds of pricing things that you heard about previously, and a lot of business product strategy issues around how do you grow revenues in your area. And monetization in IoT and software as a service is obviously enormous these days. Let me introduce the first person here, which is Kevin, just to give you a little bit of background on him. He's the product marketing manager at West Safety Services, and he's got over 30 years of experience, having worked in all kinds of different areas in the computer industry. He's done a lot of work in various sectors, including finance, manufacturing, and engineering, and telecommunications. And part of that was also spending about 20 years at Sun Microsystems. And during that time, he actually had the chance to implement Oracle's e-business suite within the global sales and service organization. So, you know, hands off to you doing that. I'm sure that was a major implementation project. So he's going to be talking to us in detail about some of the things that West went through in their monetization strategy as they brought out some new systems within one segment, which is the smart cities area and public safety, if you think of IoT as being a big space there. Our second speaker is Todd Steele. He's the Director of Product Management at Gemalto at their software monetization division. And he's been there for 10 years, primarily, I guess, first with the SafeNet group and then with Gemalto. So he's been there for over a decade, and he heads up all the product management for that suite of software. And his experience in working with many different clients and customers in different situations, I think, will be invaluable as we talk about customer experiences and some of the customer journeys that all of you may be going through as you think about how best to monetize the offerings that you have. So let me just start off with a couple of slides to set some scenes here on kind of what's going on in IoT and monetization. One of the things you're going to hear is how important ecosystems are today. And if you look at the 10 or so sectors of IoT, and many people will talk to you about 12, 15, whatever, but everything from connected cars to intelligent transportation, smart cities, connected homes, and so forth. There's huge opportunities nowadays with the new technology as the prices of all these devices and sensors have been driven down. And at the same time, everything is being networked and connected. One of the things that's extremely important here is the fact that each one of these areas has unique attributes, use cases, all kinds of requirements that are very different from one sector to the other. And because of that, there's going to be different technologies and different business cases. And most importantly, there's also going to be many different new ecosystems that will be developed. So one of the things that we do, and a lot of the work is we work with our clients, is think through all of the aspects of the ecosystems that you exist in, no matter what business you're in, whether you're in the consumer side or the business side, industrial, agriculture. There are going to be many, many other players and partners that you should be considering. The most important here is actually not on this chart, it's to the far right. It's who is the customer. And whether it's your customer, whether it's your customer's customer, who is it that you're trying to attribute the value to? And then work back through this ecosystem matrix, if you will, to the kinds of things they do, the problems they have, the things they interact with, all the way through organizations and platforms and technologies to ensure that you have a well put together value delivery system that can bring, with your partners, a complete solution to your customers. Again, tying the value that you bring with your partners to the values that are going to be attributed to your customers. So generally these can be divided up into a couple of areas, cost reduction being one, revenue enhancement being another. If you look at all the subsets underneath there, obviously you'll see quite a few areas in terms of trying to improve the customer experience, reducing costs, inventory costs, smoothing distribution, and so forth. So you'll probably find a lot of the kinds of value you will be able to bring to market on this list here. And I just encourage you to think of, how do I partner with different people in my ecosystem to bring these kinds of values to the customers that I want to have be excited about my products. Final thing I wanted to say right now, and then we'll move into Kevin's presentation here a little bit, is what we use as a 4 values framework. And this will come out in some of what Kevin talks about today. But if you look at the ways you can better monetize your offerings, they can fall into multiple areas. These are some good areas to think through. So are there various kinds of vertical integration you can do with other products and other categories and other segments, or horizontal across them? Are there entirely new kinds of value, new systems? And Kevin's going to give you a great example of that in a couple of minutes, of what they've done in the public safety area to create some very new and creative approaches. Or value migration. Can you get into entirely different segments, into adjacent segments that you maybe didn't serve before, which will open up new revenue opportunities for you? And then the final thing is making sure you have a complete value delivery system so that you pull together all the pieces of your value proposition, working with your partners, your distributors, your channels of distribution, what have you, to make sure you deliver that value to your customers. So let me pause there, and let's take the first question. Actually, let's do a polling question here if we could, before we get into this. And the first polling question we're going to have is, at what stage is your company in its IoT development? So hopefully you've got that up on your systems, and you can put that together, and we'll look into that. I feel like I'm about to draw something out of a hat here as we wait for the results. It's kind of fun. So it looks like at this point the second one here, just researching, and the last one is that you're actually underway now. That's pretty good. So about half of you, let's say, are looking at sort of researching, evaluating things. About 40% actually have something underway, that's actually pretty impressive. Todd, how does that compare to some of what you?
Yeah, I think that aligns very closely to many of the conversations I've been having. I think everyone sees the competitive threat of not doing something, right? Bringing, as we heard yesterday a lot, bringing the value closer in more on-demand fashion. If your competitors are doing it and you aren't, you're losing out, and your product will become more antiquated over time.
Good. Okay, so let me start with a first question here to Kevin. So tell us a little bit about West, some of the things that you're doing there, and some of the challenges that you faced as you went through this transition that you've done.
Okay, Chris, thanks. If we can go to the next slide. All right, thank you.
Let's see how Kevin is.
Yeah, testing. Can you hear okay? All right, good. Good morning, everyone. So West Corporation, we help to connect your employees and your customers with corporations. And we deliver a global leader in delivering conferencing services. So you may have heard of Intercall. We do interactive voice contact center automation, and we're a value-added telecommunications service provider. And in that, I work in our Longmont office, where our corporate is in Omaha, Nebraska, at the West Safety Services Division. And we are the leader in North America for public safety services and automation for 911 call processing, such as routing and location services, and other public safety services. So as you can see, we are an industry leader, and we drive a lot of innovation in these particular areas, primarily around how to locate you, for example, down to 50 feet if you place a 911 call in a particular area, if it's a wireless call. We are very mission critical, so security and privacy is utmost importance to a 911 type network. We make sure that all the data is highly secured and private in that regard, and how it's data at rest and data in motion. We can offer customized solutions for regulatory environments. There's over 6,000 communication centers across the United States, and a lot of them expect local control and customization. We deliver those capabilities for them. And we deliver a highly trusted set of services across the nation for these capabilities for safety services in the marketplace. I wanted to start off with, you asked the question, Chris, about some of the challenges. So we're working with networks that are very old, TDM type architecture, circuit switch technologies, legacy closed environments, and it really impedes innovation and growth going forward. So some of our challenges are dealing with these current legacy environments and how to transition them to the next generation networks that are emerging. Also, the public safety industry, and 911 in particular, is only growing at like low single-digit percentages at this time. So we are looking at ways to move into adjacent industries to be able to grow our public safety and safety services capabilities beyond just 911 and public safety services. And what you see depicted here, we talk a lot at this conference about the now economy, and that is very true, and we're moving to that where you want instantaneous results. You know, I want my coffee right now, I want my prescription delivered right now. Where we work and operate, delivering these types of real-time decision processing capabilities now is of its utmost importance, because lives depend on the access to this now information. As you can see here, what we're depicting is the future of smart firefighting. And this is an augmented reality capability where we can display instantaneous information about people, places, and things related to an event or an incident. And so by looking at this type of information, we can bring in all access to their information sets, run analytics against that, and be able to give them real-time decision processing capabilities at the point of need. So this is a great example in hosting what you're doing around the now economy with this type of use case. So what's happening right now and how these challenges are being addressed is you see two networks here on the graph. The one on your left is labeled Next Gen 911 or Next Generation 911 Services. And the underlying network transport, not to get too technical, is Enterprise Services IP Network. This is an all IP network that's replacing all this TDM circuit switch technology. And so now we're going to be able to see the emergence of not only just voice, picking up a call and dialing 911 or text services, but I'm now going to be able to deliver all the things that I expect for multimodal services, such as picture to the PSAPs, public safety answering point, video services, or the Internet of Things, where I could take all this sensory information from cars, all kind of other contextual information from buildings, if they're smart buildings or smart lighting, whatever, can be applied in this type of environment because you have this IP broadband network that now is going to be available. On the right is the opportunity where we have the National Public Safety Broadband Network. This is going to be awarded at the end of this year, just in the next 30 to 60 days, and we're going to see a dedicated LTE network across the United States for all of our first responders. This is really important because it gives them the dedicated bandwidth to be able to build next generation applications and services, leveraging things like the Internet of Things and advanced analytics to be able to deliver situational awareness and true interoperability across these networks. So this is the exciting part that's emerging that's going to address the challenges, Chris, that you just stated that we'll be moving towards over the next few years.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'm curious to know, before I go on to a question for Todd here, you're talking about all these different players here in this ecosystem. I mean, how many different players do you literally, I mean, are there dozens, are there hundreds of people you're integrating with and working with? Yeah,
there are literally hundreds of different type of partners and stakeholders and end users and vendors in this ecosystem. This is a very broad network with a lot of different capabilities. That, you know, examples like computer-aided dispatch vendors, GIS. You can imagine this is very geospatial-driven. Analytics vendors, companies like ours that do the delivery and the transport of the information all play in this ecosystem. And we're going to see the emergence of a lot of new companies with new innovation that take advantage of these next generation services that will be joining the ecosystem going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's some serious integration going on here with that many players trying to get everybody to talk together. So anyway, let's move on to Todd here. Todd, so you've worked with a lot of different customers over time. You've seen a lot of the challenges they go through. Maybe just give us a little overview of what you think some of the biggest challenges are that people are facing as they go through thinking about how to redo their business or how to better monetize their businesses.
Sure. So I think, as we heard in the previous session, this concept of being able to test packaging and segmentation and making sure you have the right feature set. To do that in a kind of a now economy, if we continue to use this terminology, you want to be able to easily switch your packaging, your good, better, best models, and be able to introduce these things very dynamically without having to re-engineer, without having to change your operational process. So what we see a lot is the desire for customers to have a platform to test the packaging, feature on demand right now, changing the packaging right now, all the time. So this is kind of one of the big things I see. Also, one of the key strategies most companies that I talk to who come to us for help in monetization is they're as a hardware company, they're moving to a software type of industry and revenue and evaluation. And as you do that, you want to be able to do future upsells. You want to be able to return on your investment, your software investment, more immediately than having to create a new model of hardware and ship the new model of hardware. So when you do that and you're selling hardware, and you might be selling through a channel or a distributor, you very well in the B2B industry don't know who the end user is. You don't have that connection to create the upsell opportunity for more software, for more value over time. So this is one of the main challenges that I think licensing and activation, and I believe we have a session coming up on how entitlement management helps you in this process of selling through a channel and understanding who your customer is, so you can create those future upsell opportunities later on.
Good. Okay, great, thanks. So Kevin, back to you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you see as the 2 or 3 main opportunities that IoT brings to, in your specific case here, you can share with us.
Yeah, I think what the main thing is, it's going to provide this true situational awareness capability. Today, for example, in the world that I live in, supporting these type of first responders, when they get dispatched, there's very little information that they know. For example, if it's a fire, they would know the address and the nature of the problem, right? That there's a commercial building fire at this location. Going forward, with all the addition of the Internet of Things and the ability to add those into the environment, not just at the point of dispatch, but when they're en route to the location, to be able to take advantage of all those technologies to drive real-time decision capabilities before they even get to the scene and have to do like a human assessment of what's taking place, and then throughout the entire event. So they can interact with all these different systems. So for example, you see a lot of this in the news about dashboard cameras on the police cars, or the video cameras, the bulletproof vests that are now becoming ballistic. So there's smart sensors on those, so if there's a bullet that hits that vest, that there's an alarm that's sent off. And you get all that type of situational awareness capability. Smart guns, the smart holster releases, many, many examples in that type of environment. This gives you the example of what that true situational awareness elevation can become as we move forward in this marketplace.
So, before going in, I think you were going to give us a demo here. Before doing that, did you have another slide you wanted to talk about, sort of in the future of where things are going here?
So, wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this slide. This is an example of what I'm going to show you in a demonstration. This system is built in the cloud environment today. We spent the past 2 years building this for the public safety industry. We deliver today our equipment. It's CP equipment that we sell to the 6,500 PSAPs, right? So it's very old legacy type style pricing. We sell the equipment. It's deployed and implemented, and then we recognize revenue from those installations. And we have our support models that go forward on that. Now what we're seeing is a big transition to these cloud services that we can incrementally drive towards replacing the on-site legacy purchases. And so this is one example of what we're building. There's other ones that are in development that you see here. And so the cloud in the middle is the emergency aware services, which is what I talked about, driving that situational awareness capability. In there you see, for example, how do you bring data into the cloud, the data services? What do I do from an intelligence standpoint as far as business rules that I want to action against? For example, if it's a sensor reading, what do I do with that? Big data analytics for more comprehensive analysis or real-time analysis on the left-hand side of the cloud. And then on the right, are all the data source integration. So if I want to bring contextual data into this environment, such as weather analytics or hospital availability, social media feeds, all that would come in through those contextual interfaces. And then how do you manage the environment from an administrative standpoint, standing up the services, the users, those functions, and then the devices in the IoT world. So what we see in the pricing and monetizations going forward is that that base service will become like a minimum monthly fee that we would charge as a subscription for these jurisdictions. And then we have the ability, as you go around the cloud, to drive incremental monetization. So on the left, you see today where we're working directly with Gemalto, and we're using their sensor logic platform to integrate and do sensor enablement and authentication of the sensor devices on the left. And that's where you see interfaces with the smart buildings, smart cities. It could be like smart fire hydrants or those type of examples. Even utilities or mission critical infrastructure would be examples, and then environmental readings. So if we want to track like toxics or weather type things or other type of activities, we can integrate all those through the sensor logic platform. Then on the top are all the contextual interfaces, as I mentioned, like bring in the weather analytics. So if I've got a chemical spill and I want to look at a simulation of how I want to analyze that, how that's going to unfold from a plume model standpoint, I can use weather as one of the attributes of that. Handling material, hazardous handling material sheets would be digitized and brought in from this level. Other GIS data sets, even social media feeds that I can analyze. So if someone in the vicinity is smelling gaseous smells, for example, that I can pick that up and take action against that based on what's happening in the location or the keyword searches for social media feeds. And then on the right are the users. And so here's where we're giving them not just access to the information, but actually control the devices. So if they want to take ownership of a camera in a certain intersection and zoom in and pan and do those kind of things, they have access to do that. So we have the ability to look at all these different licensing and pricing models of how we monetize this going forward around usage on the left, or number of devices, the level of contextual services, some of them being free, open source, other ones being paid services, and that's part of the ecosystem, Chris. And then on the right is the users, again, based on subscribers or usage of the different services or the incremental ways to monetize these types of services.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot going on there. One of the things I really applaud you for is what you've really done here is taken a lot of complexity and working through the integration, you and your partners in the ecosystem are pulling that all together in order to deliver something which is really functional to these public safety units and the smart cities. As opposed to just producing a point product. And that's one of the things I think is getting more and more difficult, is trying to just sell a single product and just sell a one-off or whatever is not going to work very well in the IoT environment, where you want complete solutions that really work well, can be updated, monitored, and so forth. You want to go into your demo now?
Sure. And so the enabler for this is the new networks, right? Because now that we've got end-to-end broadband IP networks, we now can envision these new types of services that take advantage of all these things like IoT. So we're going to spend just a few minutes on this. This is a live demo, so I'm hoping everything goes well. So imagine all of you right now that you are a battalion chief for the fire department in your local jurisdiction, or an incident commander, to use the terminology. This happens to be a geospatial location in Washington, D.C. And if you look at the very center of this dashboard, what you see is the actual commercial building that we're being dispatched to, and you are taking responsibility for today in this simulation example. And so by clicking on that, on the right, what you see is all the building information. So now you're starting to see some of this smart situation awareness capability through IoT. I can now gain access to real-time occupancy information using internal readers from the building. Could be Wi-Fi or long-range RFID readers on badges. I can get access to the sensors inside the building. I can get locations. I can get actual building layout information for each floor level. I can get temperature readings, carbon monoxide readings, status of the elevators. Did they come down to the first floor? Do I have my egress routes opening correctly? What's the material, structure, elevation? All that information now becomes immediately accessible for you as an incident commander or battalion chief. So that's an example of the smart building. If we take a look here, we click on some of the icons. So you'll notice there's a red line circle around that. That is a machine learning algorithm that's running in the cloud that's calculating the size of that geofence based on the attributes of the incident. Size of the structure, adjacent structures, critical vulnerable components in the area, such as schools and other things. So it's calculating that through machine learning. And then what we see is by clicking on these cameras, we have direct access into the Department of Transportation cameras on each of the intersections. So you're looking at a live feed right now from Washington, D.C. with these cameras. And we can see here, but here's what we're doing, is we're running analytics against this. So it's one thing to be able to gain access to that video, but I don't have time to be pointing and clicking around, or you don't as an incident commander. So what I do is I run analytics on that for you, and I'm looking at state changes. I'm looking at hyperlocal weather condition changes. Maybe you're going from heavy rain to sleet or snow conditions or ice. I've got traffic congestion building up in the arterial routes, and so I can access all that, and it's alarming me and alerting me to only the information I need to know at that given point, because there's a change that's relevant to my incident. You see other icons out here. We're going to click on the third one here, which is a critical asset. So you're going to see the schools are all of a sudden mapped, and that you could see the ones in the geofence. So for example, if we have a toxic chemical spill, I may need to immediately go to evacuation, and all my standard operating procedures are being prescribed to me. So I'm moving from human experience to human control capabilities. And so now I know what vulnerable objects and assets are in that location, and I can immediately move my assets to those critical areas for evacuation purposes. Some of the newer things that we're working on, if you go over on the left, these are all the different interfaces like social media, the mapping layers, filtering of the information if it becomes too onerous of too much information. And so here you see, for example, we've got the firefighters. So this is a team going into the building. We have an abnormal reading on one of the firefighters based on the wearables, IoT wearables that they have on their body. And so we click on that and we could see abnormal reading. Again, this is just mock-up data for simulation here, but that's alerting me to that fact. So I can use many different types of communication mechanisms now, not just my land mobile radio, which on narrowband I have today, but I can use integrate push-to-talk interfaces directly in here. I can use video chat services. I can use any other type of modality to drive communication instantaneous to this individual or the adjacent teams. So this is the type of situational awareness that these new networks are going to enable, and how we're going to drive these services into the market for our first responders in the United States. Much more capability here, but we just wanted to give you a little taste of visually seeing exactly where this is all headed. And thank you all for being an incident commander for the past couple minutes.
That was great. You know, it's interesting because it reminds me, after the last earthquake in San Francisco, where I'm from, I remember one of the sort of the postmortems they had after that, when they were looking at all the issues they had with public safety, was that, if I'm not mistaken, the police radios didn't talk to the fire department's radios. And all I can think of is, boy, we kind of went from there to, this is almost a Star Wars kind of thing. This is like, you've come a long way, baby. So, well, this is great. You know what, let's, before, we're going to open up to, we want to open up, I want to do one other thing first, though. We have a poll. So if you can go ahead and fill this poll out, that'd be great. And then we'll open up to some questions here in a minute. So, you know, while we're waiting for this poll to come up, do you have a sense of how long it's going to take for, or will the implementation of this be highly varied by different types of cities and safety departments? I mean, I can imagine some of them accelerating fast and others may not do this for a couple of years.
That's exactly right. What we're envisioning is that we're going to see tiers of cities, like in the way that it's done today, it's based on population size or GDP for the cities of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And so we'll have different pricing structures that we'll go forward with on them. And naturally, to your point, Chris, the larger cities today, like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, other ones, they are implementing these type of IoT solutions today. What we wanted to build was an aggregation platform that could integrate them, and so that they can start with a simple use case, start with simple set of services, right? And then be able to iteratively add to those capabilities and look at a system that can look across all the various subsystems to drive the full comprehensive situation awareness that we're striving towards. So you're right, it's going to be start with the tier ones. We're tiering our pricing models that way, and then being able to move forward as the network builds out to give them these capabilities. It's going to take longer to get into the rural areas of the country versus the urban centers.
You know, before we look at the poll results here, a question for you on that. It seems to me that you have enormous opportunities too. The way you've integrated this system, again, you're picking up different pieces and parts from a lot of different players in the ecosystem, but you're now in a position where you're going to have masses of data that you can potentially monetize in different ways.
Right. Yeah, we're using a lot of the metadata services. So the jurisdictions own their data sets. One of the real important things around FirstNet is that local control, meaning the federal government's not coming in saying we're going to run everything, right? They're going to build the network out, but the local jurisdictions have control of how the services are operated and their data. And so what we're looking to do, to your point, Chris, is to look at the metadata and look at the algorithms and the analytics that can enable this so that you can create a customized solution for the first city that you build. And we've already started to build these out, but then you add these capabilities so it's very easy to just take their data and apply the analytics and the algorithms to those as we go forward. How we scale.
Wow, tremendous. So anyway, so we have the results here. So Todd, as you look through these, any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I think I see here the main one is build recurring revenue and or business models. One of the exciting parts about IoT for many customers that I talk to is moving to a more metered, usage-based model of revenue capture. One of the big challenges there, I know I'm in product management, and I have this conversation all the time with our customers and prospects in product management, which is, how do I convince my sales team, how do I convince my executive team that moving from a perpetual sale to a consumption-based model actually is going to yield us money? And what do I price it at? And what features do I price based on that? So one of the things that we've actually experienced is that people put feature-based usage into their products to actually learn as a pre-step to coming out with a meter-based pricing. Okay, what is the feature-based usage? How are people using it? How often? Who's using it? How long are they using it? And then having that analytics helps you, gives you that pre-data to decide what is the best kind of pricing options in a metered model.
Yeah, I think that one of the tremendous things about this kind of metering and usage-based things is you can attribute the value that a customer perceives to the way you price it. And to me, that kind of linkage is extremely important because I'm going to feel much better if I see value and I'm paying for whatever that unit is, whether it's by hour, by seat, by whatever. In fact, I was having a conversation this morning with someone about talking about this as even charging per API. So if you start linking all these applications, and you can imagine in the scenario that Kevin described where you have dozens of different players, maybe the way one person gets paid is not their software, whatever it is completely free. They're just getting paid for every API call to that data set. So again, some of these new capabilities provide enormous new ways to price and monetize your offerings. So I encourage you to all think of this not just as wow, there's new technology coming along that we can implement, but there's entire new ways to build new business models and generate new revenue streams.
Yeah, I think that I'll give two examples of that. One of the most exciting things I think for customers is that moving to an adaptive model of metering, it's a very fair model, it actually opens up new markets without introducing new sets of value. Two examples of this that I've seen directly is the industry where you're building MRI machines, right? And you're selling very expensive $2.5 million, $5 million machines into hospitals. Well, in the big cities, hospitals can afford to pay for these machines because of the volume of customers that come through. But you can never go to your village 100 miles out of the metropolitan area and have an MRI. You have to go to the city. But if you move your payment mechanism from this perpetual sale or this on-site sale to more of a lease model, and then you're charging per scan, right? So instead of having to come up with $2.5 million capital, you're just leasing this device, and now you're buying, every time you take an MRI machine, you're paying $2,000 to the vendor. Anytime you can stop, right? So all of a sudden you're reaching this lower level market that you couldn't. You're not adding new features, but you're opening up a new market just with a new business model. And that also, I see that a lot in the CAD industry where, you know, if you're a processor, right, and you're using software to design chips, for example, or a printer, right, you're helping, you know, industrial printing for fabrics, let's say. If you go to an Intel who's making tons of chips, right, 10 chips a week, 100 chips a week, the subscription-based pricing is, and it's a very high value, great. But you could never go to the mom and pop with the exact same feature set and get a fair value for that. But if you move to a usage-based, right, oh, you're only making 2 chips a year, okay, you know, $50,000 a chip design. It's a way to introduce yourself into new markets you couldn't get to without, right, lowering your price point at your healthy premium market.
Yeah, I think the fascinating thing about that too is it doesn't require some new innovation in technology or some breakthrough. You can use the existing things that you have and reformat, rejigger them, you know, change the business model, reprice them in a different fashion, which creates new value, as we heard in the previous session. It's not just the technology, it's the way you position the product, and pricing actually is a way to create different kinds of values.
I agree.
Anyway, I think we want to open up now for some questions. I do have one last slide I want. Actually, let's just open up for some questions right now, and then maybe we'll wrap up with some takeaways in a couple minutes. But if we have any questions from the audience, we'd be happy to take those on. I don't know if we have a microphone we can pass around. Okay, so.
Maybe you could speak to, talk about your selling services with tapping into the Department of Transportation webcams, you can have critical decision making and so forth. What about the connectivity of that and security of it? If you can tap into it, speak to that, would you?
So first is that there's a lot of open source software connections that you can do. For example, I can go out and get Oasis Have protocol and I can get access to hospital information. I can go to open data protocols and get similar type information, right? And then you have companies that deliver those services. So for example, the one you saw here, we were using Harris Corporation DOT camera integration. And so they're interacting directly with the IoT devices into their systems and they're securing those capabilities, right? So they're encrypting, authenticating each of those devices at every transaction. So when we clicked on that camera, that went through their system and they basically handled all the security aspects. What I expose is an API so that if there's a state change in that analytics, then send me the information. So either on point of click, where that's a usage-based component, or when there's an alert, when you had to calculate a certain condition that occurred that I would take action against. So security, it works through partners. What we do is we have a secure API service, RESTful-based API, and it's basically from the physical layer to the actual camera itself, all the way through the software services layer is all secured and encrypted and handled, and it comes into our system the same way. So.
Other questions? I think we have one over here.
Kevin, could you talk a little bit about privacy and some of the laws and rules? How are you getting around some of those privacy issues that people may be raising?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first is that a lot of the federal agencies are dealing with these type of security and privacy issues, and they're putting guidelines and reference documentation and blueprints out there that we all could take advantage of. And so you're right, because privacy in particular is very critical. Imagine, again, you're the incident commander. Do you want potential hack where somebody knows where the location of your firefighters, right? So that's where this local control comes in. So by giving them this portal and this dashboard and say, you have complete ownership of what you want to enable in this platform and what you don't through these privacy conditions. It gives them the flexibility and the latitude to be able to manage that based on how they want it handled. So we try to build it into the system so that, first of all, anonymization of all the data, and then securing the data. We are very comfortable with highly secure information based on 911 transactions that we deal with today. But now it's more about the privacy of these local agencies and pushing the control to them and them making the decisions about how they want access to the information and other services that are provided in their jurisdiction.
I have a question over here.
Well, social media feed, do you actually have to
right? Actually, so it was about the priority for the social media information coming in, and you get the information overload situation. So we have a couple ways that we deal with that. I touched on this very briefly in the demo, but we have filter capabilities, so you can determine what information you want turned on and off within the screens that you're seeing. And basically, it's in the social media feeds, there's been a lot of stuff in the press recently about privacy, again, and access to this information. So what we're looking at here is just what's in the geofence. So we're only looking at the information that's relevant to that geofence that we ran the machine learning algorithms on, and telling us if there's anything that is relevant to what we're seeing. So it's only alerting me when there's a condition related to that event of something that you may need to take action against, right? So filtering that information is one, and then the other thing is being able to limit the amount of information coming in based on keywords and location, and then running analytics on that and saying, just notify me just on something pertinent, otherwise just let it stream through. So we're trying to really minimize the amount of information being provided to the end user.
You know what I'd like to do is let's take one more question, and then we have a couple of takeaways I want to discuss with the panel, and then we'll break for lunch because I think we're coming up on time. And we'll be available if you want to ask more questions there. But any last questions right now? Let's take this one over here.
So you're also working with private like for the building and things like
Correct.
that type of information. How is that working?
You're exactly right. So there's public facilities and there's private facilities, right? So there's a lot of benefit to them because they're looking at saving lives and protecting property and things of that nature. So what we're doing is by us opening up our protocols and our interfaces to these environments, we can connect into their, they have open standards now, like building automation systems, building information systems. There's even now coming forward is these new BIM models where I can actually get a 3D illustration of the building and be able to pull that in if it's available from that facility. So we're finding that a lot of these commercial companies and enterprises are very open if it's secure, that we can pull the information at the point of event and be able to access that for the first responders. So, but we're also doing that with the services, right? So many of the services that you saw here were from private companies that are providing those contextual capabilities for situational awareness. So.
Great. So let's wrap up here with a few takeaways, and then we'll break for lunch here. But you know, just to hit on a couple of highlights here. You know, even though this can be extremely complex, as we're seeing here in some of these highly integrated ecosystems, trying to keep this as simple and clear to the end users and customers is obviously very, very important. A number of these other things here. Todd, you want to comment on a couple of these?
Sure. I'll focus again on this focus on business model innovation, not just product. I mean, very often, I think people come to us thinking, oh, I want to launch something new. I want to bring new value to the market. How do I monetize something new? How do I extract value from something new? What I've seen time and time again is that, again, taking a step back and understanding how you're packaging your product now and how your price, you know, what is the pricing, not the price actual dollar amount, but how is somebody consuming that value is it really can introduce you to new markets you didn't have before, introduce you to new revenue streams you didn't have before. So I think this business model innovation, and again, the ability to quickly adapt to new business models without having to go back to re-engineer, re-IT project, re-ops project, it really gives you that kind of full flexibility from a product manager to do and learn from your product in the field.
Anything else you want to add?
Also, I think in something I'm going to talk about a lot more I have another session later today about what we're seeing in terms of new revenue streams. So this extract value from adjacent markets. What we see time and again is that as device manufacturers or device vendors and selling value of what that device does, okay, that's great. But one of the really explosive revenue opportunities out there is how do you add additional revenue streams around your core value? And so there's 100 different examples about one of my neighbors in Tel Aviv had a pool, And he had the ability to turn on the lights in the pool, turn on the music in the pool, turn up the heat of the pool. So he was paying a subscription service for the remote control of his pool. Had cameras on the pool, right? So he could watch his daughter when she was having parties and making sure they weren't getting too wild. But so this subscription, right, is new value. So now it's no longer a pool sensor manufacturer, right? They're really truly transforming themselves into, now I'm a subscription software services. This is really my value. This is what's going to transform my business and really get a view of revenue explosion. So it's at adjacent markets, and then how do you have a common platform? How are you managing both selling perpetual hardware, subscriptions of software on there, meter-based models of cloud-delivered services? This becomes an operational nightmare, and this is where we are to help.
Well, that's great. Last point here I'll make is that I think, as the slide shows here, that one of the issues you have here too is breaking down different departments or functions and silos that you may have in your organizations or among various customers or clients, because in a lot of cases the benefits accrue to a broad audience of people. It's not just within one department or one area. So another one of the dynamics here. But I think it's a very exciting time to be able to get in and be able to change business models, look at these new technologies, find creative ways to do it. It's almost, the biggest challenge is almost, wow, what could we do if we partnered with this company, we added these sensors, and we then put this package together? Suddenly we can reduce costs here, make customers happier and reduce our costs. A lot of different things you can do. So I encourage you all to put on your creative thinking caps as you take a look at all the opportunities that you have in front of you. So let's, how about a round of applause here for these guys.